Okay, good evening. It's Thursday once again. Hard to believe. And Hanukkah is upon us. It's basically we're going to be lighting menorahs B'ezras Hashem next Sunday night, and it's going to be hopefully nice weather. Well, hopefully, we're going to have sunshine, and it'll be or at least by Shkia. In the past, it's been pleasant, but not always. Sometimes we get rain. But regardless, Chanukah is Chanukah, and whatever has to happen the way it's meant to happen. And you just have to understand what it is that we're supposed to be accomplishing, we're supposed to be doing, in order to be able to chaperone, as they say, get what it has to offer us. I've mentioned in passing a lot the idea of das, this idea of das. Das simply means knowledge. But in Kabbalah, it's everything. It's central to everything. It's what the whole Tikkun Ma'aseh Bereshis is about. Tikkun Ma'aseh Bereshis, because Baruch Hu took something that was broken and then fixed it. Most people don't realize the broken part because the Torah starts off with Bereshis Elokim Shemayim Haaretz, and it seems like it's starting from nothing. And we know about Yesh Ma'ayin, so the people think that Ayin is right there. That's nothing, and then what the Torah talks about after that is something. And but the reality is that that's way into the process. And as the expression, as the statement sounds, tikkun ma'aseh bereshis. In other words, something was broken before, and that's really what Kabbalah is all about. Kabbalah really is everything up until creation. But the Chumash and the Midrashim and the Gemara, whatever discusses psukim, that's dealing with creation onward. But Kabbalah deals up until creation, and you might wonder what it was that there was before creation, how it affects us, and why don't we know about it? Because after all, if it's the basis of, but how many kids need to know what happened before they're born? Right? It's enough to know that they're born, and from that point on. But the truth is, even a pregnancy can affect the way a person lives the rest of their life because of what happens in the early stages of pregnancy and mid-pregnancy, because everything has an impact, everything has an effect. Likewise in creation, that whatever is going on in history. And there's two approaches to history, really. There's our approach, there's the main approach, and then there's the real approach. Our approach basically is Tikkun Ma'aseh Bereshis, means that God fixed the world. Adam made a mistake and he unfixed the world a bit, and we were forced to leave paradise, the perfect world, Gan Eden, go into the rest of the world and try to make it back. And history's been about trying to get back to Gan Eden. And we do whatever we can to kind of simulate it, with all the pleasures we have in this world, try to recreate on some level the idea of paradise to whatever degree we can. Money seems to play a big role in that a lot of times. But ultimately speaking, we really can't get back there until Yemos Mashiach onward, when the period of free will is over and God is satisfied that what he meant to have accomplished during these last 5,700 and whatever years until Mashiach comes has actually been accomplished. But the main thing that Kabbalah speaks about in terms of understanding what went wrong and why it went wrong, and then what's necessary to fix it up, basically is this concept of das. Now we know, das gets an early introduction because the very first test that man has to undergo, we don't hear about das before that, except for the fact that God mentions the tree itself, but the very first test that man has to go through is called the Eitz Das Tov Ra. The chet they do is called chet Eitz Das Tov Ra, that the chet of eating from the forbidden fruit. Because Baruch Hu said, from every tree that are of Eden you can eat, but from this tree you cannot eat its fruit. On the day that you do, surely you shall die. And they do it anyhow, right? And there's the simplistic explanation, there's the more complicated explanation, what actually went wrong. It's kind of hard to believe that people on such a phenomenally high level spiritually and so close to God that they can talk to God. We're not talking about the oversimplified version of man and woman in the beginning of history, like two kids walking around without knowing what life is all about. These people were on a level that we won't see until well into Olam Haba, maybe the end of the 6,000, but certainly going to the world to come. And they knew a lot. They knew tremendously. Their experience of reality was at a very, very high level. And still, they made the mistake. And they ate from the Eitz Das Tov Ra. So off the bat, we're introduced to this concept of Das Tov, and das ra, right? Good das and bad das. And this is going to play it all through history of Cain and Hevel. Have good das and bad das. Cain is considered to be the bad guy, and Hevel the good guy. And again, good das and bad das. And you have Yaakov and Esav. And that is the same idea. Yaakov's got this good dust, and Esav has this bad dust, and then all through history. And you have the Greeks and the Chashmonaim, and you have always Noach and his generation, the people who insisted that this world was about physical pleasure. Noach telling them, no, we have a soul, and we have to service that, and we have to pursue a spiritual life, and they argued with them again, good dust and bad dust, all of it. So this is the theme all through history, and in our generation, it's actually playing out so strongly because of the fact that we have such an information highway. We have so much available. It's amazing what you can do, and what's people right now with AI. I mean, AI has the internet transformed the intellectual landscape back in the 1990s, and certainly accelerated education and the opposite, because we have all this abuse and people not realizing how to use it properly, letting machines think for them in the end, as opposed to accentuating the thought process. One of the beautiful things about Torah, among the many beautiful things about Torah, is that no matter how sophisticated technology becomes, you still have to always go back to the sources in the actual, the Sforim. I rely upon the internet a tremendous amount to do research and to find sources, in a much quicker time than I do it myself sometimes, or even find sources that I don't know exist yet, but they come up when I'm looking for something. But there's no replacement for taking a Gemara off the shelf and sitting down and learning the actual Gemara. It's mystical, it's magical, and whether you can shortcut the whole thing. Doesn't make a difference. And certainly because of the fact that we have Shabbos, like the Gentile world, the secular world, they don't have Shabbos per se. So therefore, for them, they can use technology 24/7 if they want to. We have to stop. We're forced to stop at least for a good 25, 26 hours every week. And you have to learn from the Sfarim. You have to do it the old-fashioned way, which is a big, big blessing, a big bracha, especially in this world. But one of the reasons why is because even though you can become smarter using things like the internet, you don't necessarily get more das. What's the difference? And if das is knowledge, it's a das tovara, right? Chava saw the tree, she saw the fruit, it looked great, and in Nechmalai skill, it was appealing to be able to understand, and so she ate, right? But in the end, it sounds like they were improved. At first, that's what it sounds like, right? Because now they now know the difference between good and evil. But then, that's not the ideal level. What's the ideal level? The ideal level is between true and false. Because good and evil can be subjective. That's clear. In fact, good and evil is what results when you take true and false. Obviously, true and truth is the ultimate good. That's Kodesh Baruch Hu. But true becomes only good when you add suffix. You add doubt, which of course is the gematria of Amalek, and when Amalek enters the picture in whatever capacity, whether it's literally as Amalek, the people attacking the Jewish people like they did back in the Midbar before getting to Har Sinai, or Haman in his time, or just technology or science or anything that by definition results in any kind of intellectual das or intellectual suffix, any type of doubt in God, doubt in his hashgacha. That's Amalekian. It doesn't make a difference how good the intentions are or how neutral the intentions are of the person teaching it. But if someone gets up and says, "I can show using science that you don't need God for creation," that's Amalekian. We're not looking to find ways to disprove the reality of God. We're looking to find ways to increase the revelation of God. And that's what Das is all about. In fact, that's really the litmus test. That's really the real way to find that if what you have is real pure Das, what the Torah talks about. We haven't got to exactly what it is yet, right? But one of the main ways to know if what you have is Das, just ask yourself one simple question. Does this knowledge make God more apparent to me and perhaps others as well in the world? Or does it lessen that awareness? If it increases the awareness, that's das. That's das tov. That's Yaakov's das. But if that das in any way, no matter how smart it sounds, how intelligent, it could be a huge mathematical equation that's beyond comprehension, how you can even work these things out. And they have things like that. Doesn't make a difference. What is the net result in terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You see, 'cause that's what happened. Look, it's right there in the Chumash. The Chumash tells you this beferish because in the Chumash, Adam eats from the eighth of das Torah, and what's his response? To go looking for God? To come closer to Kodesh Baruch Hu? No, he hides. Yeah, well, he's not dressed properly, to greet the master of the universe, etc., etc. But how did you know? Because Kodesh Baruch Hu wasn't makpid. The only reason why it makes a difference what you're wearing right now is because your lessened awareness of life. So that was the main thing. Why was clothing necessary? As Rashi points out, that until the Chet Eitz Adastra, there's no need for tznius. All this tznius, we emphasize the importance of tznius, wasn't necessary. Why? Because there was no sense of using anything in Ma'aseh Bereshis other than for the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Today, we also try to use everything the right way for Hashem and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there are thoughts in our heads about how it can be abused. How can we misuse something? Some people follow up and actually do that. Others fight the temptation and try only to do the right thing in the right way. But even the right things, the good things, can be used in the wrong way sometimes, because that's the world we live in right now. We have an onboard Yetzer Hara personalized for each individual, and because of that, things get modeled. The M is the truth itself. And that's why we learn Torah. We learn Torah basically to drag ourselves out of the confusion. The world is like a swamp. Everything's mixed together. Everything's confused together. All the different deos and approaches to life are all mixed together, and it's a very confusing world to be living in today. And now, especially with social media, I mean, it's so complicated. Things were already complicated long before that, but now what a child is exposed to, and the opinions, it's like once upon a time there were a few major opinions in the world that you had to look at and consider perhaps, and either follow one or the other. Today, it's like everybody is a major opinion. You get 65 different opinions in one day about one particular issue. And most of them are uneducated. Most of them are wrong. Most of them are misunderstood. And yet that's what gets told to the next person, the next person, the next person, making das almost impossible. Kabbalah explains that the reason why everything fell apart, we have this thing called Shviras HaKelim, where the original spheres that Hashem made before he made the ones that we live off of right now in our history, they broke. And one of the reasons they broke was because there was a lack of connection between the pieces. The same way, for example, a male and a female can live and not know about each other. He's single, she's single, he's in yeshiva, she's in seminary, right? And they're both, in the meantime, focused on their learning. They're not looking to go to shidduch at this point in time. They might get married one day. They might go to shidduch at some point in time, because the Gemara says that, at least by the first shidduch, the first zivug, that a bas kol goes out 40 days before a child is born to announce that so and so Plon is going to be marrying Plon. That's the ziva. That's the pairing up later on in the future. So it might be in the books already, but they don't know about that, and they're not focused on that. In the meantime, there's nothing is resulting in terms of contributing to the world. There's no child being born. There's no extension of the family taking place because there's no relationship. Likewise, if a couple has a lot of shalom bayis problems, the relationship breaks down. They could still be living in the same house, not yet be divorced, but the lack of connection doesn't produce anything other than the fact that they're living in the same environments. This idea of chibur is very important. It's hugely important. This idea of connecting two things that they should be joined together. Das is called the koich chibur. It has the power to join things together. So in Kabbalah, what happened was in the beginning, when the spheres first came out, the sphere that corresponds to Das didn't come out. It wasn't there. And because it wasn't there, everything was hefker. It's like walking downtown, and in the middle of the city, and you're walking by all kinds of people. Everyone's like this, going this way, that, up and down, but no one knows each other. Which is kind of what's happened, especially more so today with phones and things like that. People walk around their phones the entire time. This is nobody else exists, but you're not connected, because this person's in their own world and you're in your own world, and you don't know who this person is. You don't know if you can trust this person, but in your own community, right? The knowledge of each other, the fact that you know who that person, you know your neighbor, you've been living next to them for 25 years, or you know the community, you know where you are. That knowledge creates a chibur, allows you to connect up to something else, to become closer to it. And those relationships are what we build on, right? If a husband and wife are getting along with each other, they'll build something. That's what's called building a bias nem b'Israel. If two partners trust each other and they're working together, they'll have a strong business. If employees and employers, they can work together, then they'll build something. But the moment that there's a break in the understanding or the appreciation, the knowledge of one another, nothing works. Everything just falls apart, becomes what's called a reshus harabim in the end. Meaning that it's a public domain, that there's nothing really connected other than the fact that we're all in the same general area. So that's what it was like prior to Tikkun Ma'aseh Bereshis. There was no chibur, there's no connection. And I'm talking in very general terms. This is much more specific in the actual svarim. There's a lot more details, trying to make it as accessible as possible in the meantime. But that was the idea. There was no das, the light of das in the world prior to Ma'aseh Bereshis. So the Tikkun, therefore, was actually the addition of das. Once the das came into the world, spheres were allowed to connect to each other. Once they connected to each other, then light could be born, so to speak, and sent down to the lower worlds. Eventually, that resulted in Gan Eden, almost a perfect reality. It was not completely perfect, only because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted to leave over a little bit for mankind to fix, to be involved, to have Bechira. So therefore, he did almost everything except for a little bit, and they didn't get that right. And in fact, not only did they not complete the process, but they even undid a lot of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself did, and the world became what it is right now. Certainly far from being Gan Eden. The question is, where is Gan Eden? Where is it? Right? Did it, it was nostalgic. It was pulled back up to Shemayim, like big forklift came down and schlepped it up, or just dissipated into thin air, like a mirage in the end. Where actually is Gan Eden? Still here. Still here. Still in the world. Exactly where it was. Exactly where we left it. Well, where was it? Some people say in Iraq, some people say in Israel, right? But you can travel the entire world and you're not going to find Gan Eden. Now, you might get an aspect, a taste of Gan Eden, because you do something holy or something very constructive and you feel elevated and you feel special, right? But it's not Gan Eden. You still have to go back to work. You still have to pay the bills. You still have to take care of your health. It's not perfection, not Gan Eden, not paradise, not yet. Although, right, another aspect of that paradise, in fact, the word paradise you might have noticed or you might not have noticed, but it's very similar to the word pardes. Right? A pardes, in fact, is an orchard in Hebrew. But we know, because we've spoken about this several times, but pardes stands for pshat, remez, drush, and sod. Simple understanding of an idea, a hint to a deeper level of understanding. Drush is exegesis, or the exegetical explanation, like the Talmud, Midrashic, things like that, and then of course Yesod is Kabbalah. So this makes up Pardes. So when a person goes from level to level to level, for example, like Rabbi Kiva and his colleagues, then you do enter some type of Pardes. In fact, more than likely, the Pardes that Adam and Chava lived in was more intellectual than actually physical. But it doesn't make a difference, because the reality is what our brains make of it. Did it have beautiful trees and vines? Well, you have to understand, when Gan Eden existed, it wasn't down here in our physical world on the level we're on right now, because our world, we know, is made up of different levels of consciousness. The same way you have Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, you also have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya, and Yechida is the fifth one. You don't have a level of Torah that matched the highest level of soul because it's too high up, too unified to have any kind of description. Not even names of God exist in that level. So you have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya. So as the person goes from Pshat, a simple explanation, to a deeper one, right? There's an experience there. So something happens to you. You feel different when you get an insight, and the more meaningful the insight is, the more it affects you. But it's like a lot of things. Sometimes you get a sugar high, right? Take, or let's say you get a little, have a little wine or something, and it's a little bit of wine, just a little bit, and for a couple of seconds you feel lightheaded. It doesn't last very long because it's not enough wine to, it is such a small amount, and the alcohol content is so low that it goes to your blood system very quickly. Your brain's already cleaned out in a couple of minutes. The Gemara says you can just take a nice long walk, and the walk itself will cause the wine effect to go away. But if you have hard alcohol and you have a lot of it, you see that people get drunk and on Purim and they stay drunk. Some people stay drunk for a whole day. They can stop drinking, they're still drunk. Even after the alcohol begins to wear away, this effect of being drunk lasts because it's such a strong alcohol and such a strong drug for the brain to have to cope with. The same thing is true of an insight. Lahavdil. But a person hears an idea that's interesting, it will lift them up a little bit. You'll feel changed a little bit. It might say to yourself, I gotta think about that one for a little bit, right? But if a person hears a really profound concept, really profound idea, something that really goes against everything that they've ever thought about before, or at least goes above it, then not only will they be forced to think about that, but it will start to change their life. We know, because we see in the Shemona Esrei, we talk about Dea Bina V'Haskel, or some call it Chachma Bina Das, same idea, right? That already gives you a clue. Because Dea Bina V'Haskel, obviously, Chachma Bina Das are three spheres. Chachma is the second highest and corresponds to what's called wisdom. And Bina is the third highest, which is understanding. And then Das actually is born from the two of them. In fact, Das is called the Machriya. Chachma is chesed oriented. Bina is gevura, din oriented, right? Chesed is open, it's like water flows, right? It's megabel, it's megabel and megabel, right? It takes flour, water will take flour that's different pieces, powder, and literally join every single speck of powder together to make a dough. That's the power of chesed. It joins, it's the chibur, right? But gevura is compared to fire. And if you burn something, take a piece of wood that is unified, it's one piece of wood, when you're finished, it becomes ashes, and it's all like the flour was before you added the water. So they're opposite components. Avram was chesed, Sarah was, in fact, gvura. By Yitzchak and Rivka, it was the opposite. Rivka was the chesed, and Yitzchak was gvura. And then by Yaakov Avinu, it's a little more complicated. You have Ruchel and Leah, and actually Zilham and Bilhah and Zilpah as well. And that's a little more complicated than that one. But that's the way it works in life. These two components always. Now, each one really could obliterate the other. In fact, when Avraham took up Yitzchak as the Akedah, that was chesed taking gevura and almost shechting it. And you'll say to yourself, as a father about to kill a son for the sake of God. It's much more Kabbalistic than that. Because the truth is, that's what tikkun comes down to in this world. Rectification, I'll just give you the Kabbalistic term first, and then I'll explain it. It's called bisum hagvuris. For those who use perfume or cologne, right? Bosam, right? Bisum means to scent something, right? Like a scent, to give it a fragrance, to make it smell nicer, to make it better. It's a Kabbalistic term for tikkun. And gevuris is a light. It is a light, but it's a light that, contrary to what we're used to, is mitzamsein. It constricts. So, for example, during the Holocaust, during World War II, during times, any war, but we just said October 7th, all that goes wrong in creation is all a function of the gevura, for the most part. Because unbridled gevura, if it's not guided, because we know that gevura is necessary for discipline. Gevura has an extremely good side to it. In fact, it's essential side to it, because if you didn't have gevura, you wouldn't have discipline. You wouldn't have measurements. You wouldn't have, up and down and right and left. It's gevura that made creation possible, because without the first simsum, the light of God was too powerful for anything to exist. So the first thing God did was use gevura to mitzamsim the light, so we could have an environment in which creation could exist, and we could exist, and we could have free will. Without gevura, you can't have free will, because evil can't exist. So a good way to look at it, and understand how one is connected to the other, yet so different, is Yitzchak and Esav. Yitzchak is he's the symbol of Gevura. He is the essence of Gevura, but so is Esav. But Esav is evil, and Yitzchak is a complete tzaddik. Well, that's what happens. When a person uses Gevura in a positive way, like for discipline, to do mitzvahs, Dover Kemi Tzahara, to get up on time in the morning to daven, or to go even to go to bed at time at nighttime, on time as well. So the next day you're not so tired. Take care of your health. Not eat too much, eat the right foods, all those things. Every time that we step in, we make a decision to do the thing that's not comfortable, but is right to do. That's Gevura in action, doing the right thing. But unbridled Gevura could be a Hitler, could be a Stalin. They only did what they did. There's no chesed involved in what they did. So that's what life comes down to. Life comes down to these two forces built into creation, chesed and gevura, and they go run down through the spheres. But there's also a middle column called the kavod rachamim, the line of mercy. And really, it's a balance between the two. The way Kabbalah explains it is that Hashem took from chesed and took from gevura and mixed it together. You actually find this idea with when Sarah is happy that Yitzchak is born. One of the things she says is, "Good, now I won't be blamed anymore for the things that go wrong because the kid did it, right? True, he's only 3 weeks old, but nonetheless, he's the one who smashed the car. It's like it doesn't. That's Sarah Menu. It's like Sarah Menu. She doesn't think like it. She's not looking to get off the hook for things that she's done wrong. Yitzchak meant a lot more to her than simply the fact that Avraham had someone else to blame for things that went wrong in the house. She understood that Kol's man, that she didn't have her own child from Avraham. There was something lacking in the binding of who they were. And it wasn't just in terms of her own personal relationship. She knew that they were laying the foundations for the rest of history, for all of the Jewish people. Today, obviously, we don't have that type of huge effect on mankind, our own families, perhaps our own lives. But that was the avos, as Derech Hashem points out. That was the shorashim. It was a unique generation that people did things then either for good or for evil that laid the foundations for the rest of history. Ma'aseh avos l'mabanim, says in Ramban, means that literally they created the history of the future by what they did. So Sarah was not selfish. As much as she wanted her own child, for sure, for her own personal reasons, that wasn't her mentality. Her mentality was, I'm involved with you. You're clearly the one that God's working through to fix this world, and I have a part of that, but until we have Yitzchak, we're not going to be able to really be one and combine together. So that's what it is. A child is exactly that. A child is a portion of the father. It's not just it's machriya, the parent, so to speak, and making shalom between the two of them, which the child can do later on, right? But it's the fact that the child is a combination of both, and that changes the whole circumstance, the whole setting. That's what das does. That's what das is called, the koicha mechriya. In fact, unbeknownst to many people, right, in the morning, for those who actually said, the men usually said anyhow, but for those women who also said, you'll probably notice that it mentions that there are 13 principles that Rabbi Yishmael said that we use to darshan the Torah, HaShavua, Kol v'chomer, right, different rules that we can use to learn out halachas or sources for halachas or midrashim based upon these rules that were passed down. They didn't make them up out of nowhere. These are rules that were passed down from Moshe Rabbeinu. And the fact that the number is 13, there is actually one that says a lot longer, but that's when we go with 13. 13 always means something very, very elevated. Just like, for example, the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. They come from something called the Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikna, literally the 13 rectifications of the beard, but that's just a very high level of light up on the highest levels of the spheres. The last one is, right, you have two psukim contradicting each other, right, and to the third one comes and is machriya between the two of them. People rattle that off every day, and why shouldn't they? Because as far as they're concerned, it's just a principle of learning Torah. Kabbalistically, no. That is actually the whole point of life in this world. In fact, the Gemara has a discussion in Sanhedrin about what's better. To have a psach halacha, like you go to court, someone goes to court with somebody, based in Sanhedrin, and the court decides definitively in favor of one over the other. Is that the ideal or a pshara? So first the Gemara sides with the idea of psach halacha, because that's the logical thing, right? You cut it off. This is the emes, this is the truth. And ideally speaking, in the future, that's exactly what's going to be. But in the meantime, we're not in that level of reality, not in that world right now. We're living in the world prior to Mashiach, and we're still part of the world post Gan Eden. So in the meantime, so the Gemara says, pshara, making a compromise, finding some balance between the two different sides, even in the court of law. This idea of being able to do that, of being able to evaluate, because, and just one more point to make this idea, the Gemara asks a question and says, where should we put the brucha of Havdalah? Because Motzi Shabbos, we mentioned Havdalah and Shemon Esrei in Mariv. And usually we try to put any additions to Shemon Esrei in the area where it makes the most sense, based upon the theme of that particular brucha. So the Gemara asks the question, where should we put the brucha of Havdalah, right? Atachon and Tanu, where are we going to put it? So the Gemara answers and say we should put it Atachon Adam Das, right? Put it there. Why? Because if there's no Das, there's no Havdalah. You need to have Das to be able to distinguish between one thing and another thing. That's one of the best indications that Das is missing from the world, is when people can't distinguish truth from falsehood, and we are there. We are there. The Gemara says that prior to Mashiach's arrival, Das will be ne'adar. It'll be missing from the world. So at first I thought this meant that people are going to lie a lot, and that's been going on for thousands of years. What's the chiddush? But now you can see for yourself, it's not just that people are lying. People are telling lies, but thinking it's the truth, pushing it as the truth. See, when you lie, you know the truth. You might pretend that you don't, but inside you know the truth. So as long as you know the truth, there's a chance to come back to it. You might change your mind. You might be persuaded to go back and do what's right. But if you think that what you're saying, the lie that you're perpetrating is in fact the truth, there's nothing to change. So people go out there and they support the Palestinians against the Israelis as if they're taking the moral high ground, when in fact it's just the opposite. And say, yeah, you're all biased, and so of course you think like that, and they think like that. So what's the difference? Just the facts. Just the facts. And people have been putting the facts on the table now for the last 2-3 decades. Explain the whole thing, how it works, and it's in the papers. Even the Arab papers talk about these things. But that's the Arab world. The Arab world can say all kinds of things, and the truth about what's really going on can happen, but the fear element and the lack of wanting to change the situation or not being able to change the situation, right? And some of the world goes along with that. It didn't for the longest time, but that's the world. Truth is ne'adar. Why? Because das is ne'adar. Because das is missing from the world. So, in Kabbalah, basically, that's missing from the world, meaning that the light of God that we get to allow us to be able to go the extra step, the extra distance, to know the truth, it's been cut off from the world. Because you go back to the beginning, right? In the very, very beginning, it says that God made this light. That was the light of Das. We call it the Oregon because God hid the light. But that light, what was that light for? With that light, it says that Adam Arishon was able to see from one end of the world unto the other end of the world. What light allows you to do that? Physical light certainly doesn't. It doesn't make a difference how tall you are. At some point in time, you can't see that far. How can you see? Because that light is the one you look at the world with your mind's eye. You can see the world in your mind. You can imagine beyond what your physical eyes allow you to see. And that's not imaginary. That's real. So that light was in the world. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid the light. So now we're in trouble. Because that light of Das that we need, that Hashem brought back for Tikkun Ma'aseh Bereishis, and then took it away once again, not completely because the world was still standing. still existing. Right? So what are you supposed to do? So so Rashi brings down the Gemara that says that Hakadosh Baruch Hu hid that light for tzaddikim lasi lavo as a gift. Why? Because he looked into history and he saw that there's going to be Rishoyim, evil people in history, who would abuse this light, and therefore Hakadosh Baruch Hu hid it from them that they shouldn't be able to get it. So then aren't we all in the same boat? How can we light Ner Chanukah and say by doing that we're accessing the Or HaGanuz, the light of Das? It's not there until Mashiach comes. So Kabbalah explains because the hiding of the light meant, and even though it says Lasi Lavo just means in the future, by the way. It doesn't necessarily mean the world to come. We just take it that way. But it also means in the future as well, that point onward. But it doesn't really make a difference. Because with this light, you can actually live in this world and in the world to come simultaneously. You do it on Shabbos, whether you realize it or not. At least if you keep Shabbos properly. Anybody who keeps Shabbos the way Shabbos is meant to be kept, on the level of holiness, and does it with the proper kavanah, the proper energy, and the proper activities, and all of that, rather than simply just take a day off, can actually enter. That's what Chazal say. That Shabbos is equal to 1/60th, or at least there's 1/60th of the world to come in Shabbos. Where's that come from? And how do you access that? Well, that's the das that God puts in Shabbos. Why? Because as Reb Dessler explains, that when God stopped working, it meant he stopped hiding himself. The only work that God does that goes against his nature, so to speak, Kaviochel, is that he hides himself. The fact that we can't see God so clearly the 6 working days of the week, and that God can hide himself so much, goes against his nature. Because after all, he is in everything, and everything's inside of him. So how is it possible to even hide? He does it anyhow. He hides through nature, he hides through misunderstanding, whatever he uses to fool a person that they can look right at God and not see him. And be confused and be mistaken about his reality. But, says the Leshem, that the hiding of the light just meant that God said, from this point onward, only a person who's fitting to receive the light, they can access it. Not the full light. That light we won't see until 6,000 and onward, because that light is too powerful. That's what God told Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, can I have a little bit of that light? Since we're, you forgave the Jewish people, everything's cleared up to a large degree from the golden calf. Maybe this is a good time to, just me. I won't take it down with me. Whatever he saw was so much shpia that when he came down from the mountain, he was glowing with it, not physically. But you could see it came out of him spiritually. Sometimes in certain Gedolei Dor, especially when they're older, it almost seems like their skin is translucent and the light comes out of them. You can experience it, you can feel it to some degree. But the reality of Moshe Rabbeinu, still necessary to be in the world, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, I can't show you my face. I mean, I can't show you that light square on, because if I did, you would have to die. In fact, that's what Neshika is. That's the Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu and Tzaddikim, they die by a death called Neshika, divine kiss. All that is God giving them that revelation. And the revelation is so powerful, the body can't handle. The body dies in ecstasy, right? In tremendous pleasure, but it can't survive it. But that's okay. It's time for the soul to go back to Shemaim in the meantime. The body will come back later on to Chis Mesim. So instead, God shows in the back of his head, meaning a much more filtered version. That's available in the world. That light is there for the person who is Rui, the person who is a kli, a container, able to get it. And the truth is, on Shabbos you can get it sometimes in the presence of a tzaddik. You can get, it always amazes me. Not really. That means you think it doesn't. But it's just a wonderful feeling to be in the presence of a gadol ador, or someone to be a tzaddik. It melts you. It changes you. It's not just your psychological reality, realizing this person's important, but somehow just the way they carry themselves and the way they present themselves, and it's mashpia, and your body is transformed, and you get some of that. That's what you're experiencing. That sense of awe. You get an insight. You learn a piece of Torah that literally is just so elevating, so exciting to have learned it. You're experiencing the light. The trouble is that most people don't know it, so they don't know how to go get it again. Or they get so little of it that it's like gain. It's like taking a sip of something, enjoying it temporarily, but it's gone. The pleasure's gone. You eat a chocolate bar, it's great while you're having the chocolate bar. But the moment it's over, it's over. It might even leave a bitter taste in your mouth after, because that's the way the physical works. But when a person gets the organuz, that light, the light of das, this fantastic light that is mechaber, joins things together. It brings like it creates a synergy between people and in the world. But most important of all, it's megala kodesh baruch Hu to everybody else. You become a ner shochanaka. So when the Bnei Yisachar says that by lighting ner shochanaka, you can access the or haganuz, it's not inside the oil per se. I mean, it's just a little jar of oil, and you look into it, and you can see right through the other side. Someone looks from that side, you look from this side. You don't see organuz, you see them. They're distorted, but them. The flame, it's burning, it's beautiful. It's not about that. It's about how, by doing that and focusing and being mushpa, allowing it to impact you and doing it with the right kavanah, the right understanding, with the right intention, with the right mindset and attitude and all of that, you unlock a door. It's like a vault, right? There's a vault with a combination lock, and the guy sits there pressing all the numbers. He can't do it. Doesn't know the numbers. Doesn't know the combination. So whatever's inside stays inside, and they stay on the outside. And even though they know what might be on the inside, it doesn't affect them because they can't get to it. But as Shlomo Melech said in Mishlei, he said, if you pursue it like silver and buried treasures, then das Elokim, another name for the same idea, and Yirah Shamayim you will find. You have to want it that badly. You have to pursue it with the same type of energy. You can even just look at the Kosh Baruch and say, Hashem, I don't exactly know what it is, and I don't exactly know how to get it, but I want it, because I've been told that if I have this das, I can see you more, and I could be a vehicle, a channel for your light into the world. I can make your reality stronger, and I want to be a part of that. It's already doing a lot. And if you have that kind of focus, as you light the Ner Chanukah, you open the door, you unlock the portal, and the das starts to come in. Because in the end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who controls it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who determines. He's the committee, Kiviyocha, that decides who's Zoicha and who's not Zoicha. But once you get it, and once you taste it, and it comes through you, well, you become elevated. And the greater the amount is that you're exposed to, the more it does it to you. Till find that inspiration, right? You ever go to a great cheer and walk out like, totally inspired, like, just want to go do great things and keep learning? I mean, I've gotten to certain shiur where I've read certain story. When I was finished, like even my body was on the same side, saying, "Yeah, let's go do something important. Let's go learn some more. Let's get up tomorrow morning early." And the next morning you struggle. The body's already taking control. The soul's gone on vacation overnight while you're sleeping, right? But at some point in time, it starts to be mashpia. Before you know it, it becomes your way of life too, and you live in a whole different plane. And even though you walk the same earth, you talk to the same neighbors, you drive the same type of car, you're not the same world. We see these tzaddikim, they see these gedolim, and they're there. We talk to them, and they're functioning. They're directing us and guiding us, but they're not really part of this world. So we take that, we make the assumption that it's only because they have decided to separate themselves from it. They don't want a part of it, but really, they have a Yitzhak too, and really they might want it, maybe even have moments of weakness. No, it's not that way. If it was, they wouldn't be who they are. On the contrary, the Torah that they've learned, the vehicle for organuz that they have become, it transforms them. It's almost like they're made from a different fabric. They look and sound exactly like the next person, a little bit, they sound human, right? But they're angelic. They're a whole, and the average person can be that way too. They won't be average anymore once they start off, but that's got to be the goal. People accept mediocrity. People accept that what they know, if it's enough to get by, if it's enough to survive in their community. They're accepted. They're considered to be responsible. They go to davening on time. They tried to have some kavanah, know what the words are saying, maybe yes, maybe no. Right? They put in some learning time. They go to Daf Yomi, maybe perhaps, or even more. They might be learning Kol even. They might be a big Talmud Chacham, right? But that's where they stop. They don't understand there's this whole higher level of existence that HaKadosh Baruch Hu built into Ma'aseh Bereshis. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Hanukkah, the last holiday, to be sanctioned, because after that there was no one who could do it. We have no Sanhedrin, we have no Anshe Knesset Gdola. It was the last holiday HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to us, going to Galus, to tell us what? To tell us, don't worry. No matter how deep you go into the darkness, how deep you go into exile, you should know the light goes with you. It might be harder to find, it might be too distracting to look for it, but you have to know that the fact that you're amongst, in a world without prophecy and without the kind of miracles that we're used to hearing about in Tanakh knowledge, it doesn't make a difference. The light's still there with you. And the Ner Shulchan Aruch to remind you that if you make the effort to access it, you will receive it. And once you do, you'll know about it. You'll feel the difference. You'll want it more, and your life will be transformed. Frilchen Chanukah, Alitech Chanukah, and Chanukah Samech, and good Shabbos, of course.